Welcome back to the channel everyone, and a huge thank you for tuning in today, because what we are about to talk about sounds almost unbelievable at first hearing. The idea that a simple 1984 1-cent coin, a penny that most people would walk past on the street without a second glance, could in certain extraordinary circumstances be valued at an astonishing $15 million. And before anyone rushes to the comments thinking this is pure exaggeration or internet hype, stay with me to the end, because the world of rare coin errors, minting mistakes, experimental strikes, transitional metals, and freak production anomalies has repeatedly shown that tiny details can create massive value. And today we are diving deep into the story, the theory, the known errors, the rumored mistakes, and the realistic possibilities that could elevate a 1984 Lincoln cent from pocket change to legendary status. Starting with some context about the year and mint itself, because 1984 was a significant period for United States coinage, as the mint was still dealing with the long-term consequences of the metal transition that had occurred in 1982 when cents officially shifted from predominantly copper composition to copper-plated zinc. And although that change was supposed to be complete, the reality inside the mint was far more complex, with leftover planchets, experimental blanks, quality control challenges, worn dies, high-speed presses, and human oversight all colliding in ways that created some of the most fascinating modern era coins known today. And the Denver Mint, marked by the D Mint mark, was one of the busiest facilities, producing billions of cents annually, which statistically increases the chance that something rare and dramatic could slip through unnoticed. And when we talk about a hypothetical $15 million valuation, we are not talking about a normal circulated 1984 cent with minor doubling or a bit of die wear. We are talking about a perfect storm of multiple extreme errors combined into a single surviving specimen, something so unusual, so well documented, and so unique that it would rewrite numismatic history, starting with the most famous known error associated with 1984 cents, the double die obverse, which is already one of the most dramatic and collectible double dies of the modern era, featuring strong doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," caused not by machine doubling but by a misalignment during the die creation process. And while most known examples are from Philadelphia, the possibility of an undiscovered or extremely rare Denver double die with even stronger, more dramatic hub doubling cannot be dismissed entirely, especially when we consider how dies were shipped, modified, and sometimes reworked during that era. And now imagine that this hypothetical 1984 cent not only exhibits a massive double die obverse rivaling or exceeding the famous Philadelphia version, but also displays doubling on the reverse, something extraordinarily rare for Lincoln cents of that period, creating a true double die on both sides, instantly placing it into a category that would already command 6 or 7 figures if authenticated. But the story does not stop there, because metal composition errors are where valuations begin to explode. And the most legendary modern cent errors involve strikes on the wrong planchet, especially transitional metals, like being struck on a pre-1982 solid copper planchet, or, even more astonishingly, on an experimental alloy never intended for circulation. And although officially all 1984 cents should be copper-plated zinc, history has proven that leftover copper planchets have appeared dated years later, such as the famous 1943 copper cents and 1944 steel cents, and even more relevant, a small number of post-transition copper cents from the early 1980s have been discovered. So if a genuine 1984 cent were found struck on a solid copper planchet with full mint luster, correct weight around 3.11 grams, and no signs of alteration, that alone could push the value into the multi-million-dollar range due to its transitional significance. But for a $15 million valuation, the coin would need something even more extraordinary, such as being struck on a planchet made of a metal never officially used for cents, for example aluminum, brass of an experimental ratio, or even a foreign planchet accidentally fed into the press. And while that sounds far-fetched, the United States Mint has a long documented history of experimental strikes, test alloys, and internal trials that were never meant to leave the facility, and occasionally, through human error, such pieces have escaped into the wild. And if a 1984 cent were struck on an experimental planchet that could be scientifically proven through metallurgical analysis to match a mint test alloy from that era, the historical importance alone would send shockwaves through the numismatic community. But now imagine stacking yet another layer of rarity onto this already unbelievable coin, such as a dramatic off-center strike combined with a broad strike or multiple strikes, where the coin was struck more than once with rotation or misalignment, creating overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions, yet still retaining the full date and mint mark, because collectors highly value off-center errors when key identifying features remain visible. And when such errors are combined with double dies and wrong planchets, the result is not just rare, it is unique, a one-of-a-kind artifact of minting chaos, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in high-end numismatics. But we can push this hypothetical scenario even further, because die errors themselves can reach extreme levels, such as major die breaks, retained cuds, or shattered dies, where large portions of the design are missing or raised due to broken dies, and if a 1984 D cent were struck during a catastrophic die failure, producing massive retained cuds that dramatically alter Lincoln's portrait or the lettering, while still being identifiable and aesthetically striking, that visual impact would add another dimension of desirability, especially if the coin shows clear evidence that it was struck early in the die break process rather than being a later, heavily worn example. And then there is the possibility of a wrong denomination strike, where a cent design is struck on a planchet intended for a completely different coin, such as a dime, quarter, or even a foreign denomination, and while wrong denomination errors are known, a cent design struck on a planchet of significantly higher intrinsic value, or on a planchet with unusual dimensions, would create an instantly legendary piece, particularly if the planchet itself has historical significance. And speaking of history, provenance plays a massive role in reaching record-breaking prices. Because if such a coin were discovered in an old mint employee estate, a sealed government bag, or a hoard with clear documentation tracing back to the mid-1980s, that story would add layers of credibility and intrigue, making collectors not just buy a coin, but buy a piece of American mint history. And when we talk about $15 million, we are talking about auction room drama, international bidding wars, museum interest, and private collectors competing not for profit, but for legacy. And in that context, the condition of the coin becomes absolutely critical, because even the rarest error can lose significant value if damaged, cleaned, or heavily circulated. So this hypothetical 1984 D cent would need to be in exceptional condition, ideally uncirculated, with original surfaces, strong strike details, and no post-mint damage. And if it retained full mint red color or at least a high percentage of original luster, the eye appeal would elevate it from a scientific curiosity to a show-stopping masterpiece, and certification would be the final key, because such a coin would need to be authenticated and encapsulated by top-tier grading services, with extensive analysis, weight measurement, metal composition testing, die study, and peer review, and once certified as genuine, unique, and historically significant, the numismatic narrative would practically write itself, with headlines about the most valuable modern penny ever discovered, comparisons to legendary rarities like the 1943 copper cent and the 1955 double die, and debates among experts about how such a coin could have escaped detection for decades. And beyond the technical aspects, there is also the psychological factor, because collectors are drawn to stories of mistakes, of human error creating unintended treasures. And the idea that something so small and ordinary could become so valuable resonates deeply with people, fueling demand and driving prices to levels that might seem irrational but are very real in the high-end collectibles market. And while it must be said honestly that no confirmed 1984 D cent has yet sold for $15 million, the purpose of this exploration is to show that under the right combination of errors, mistakes, and historical context, such a valuation is not pure fantasy but a theoretical upper limit based on how the market has responded to unique coins in the past. And it also serves as a reminder that countless coins sit in jars, drawers, and collections around the world, waiting to be examined closely, weighed carefully, and studied under magnification, because the next great discovery comes from someone curious enough to look twice. And as you think about your own change or inherited collections, remember that rarity is not always about age, but about circumstances, anomalies, and stories frozen in metal. Next, 2001 cent coin. Today we are diving into a topic that sounds almost impossible on the surface yet perfectly fits within the strange and fascinating world of numismatics, the idea that a simple 2001 cent coin, a penny most people have handled countless times, could under the rarest and most extraordinary circumstances be valued at an astonishing $12 million. And while that number may initially sound exaggerated or unrealistic, this long deep exploration is designed to explain how errors, minting mistakes, transitional anomalies, experimental processes, and unique combinations of factors can elevate a modern cent into legendary status. So stay with me, because this is not about common pennies or minor flaws, but about the extreme outer limits of what is possible when rarity, history, condition, and demand collide. And to truly understand how a 2001 cent coin could reach such a valuation, we must first step back and understand the context of the year 2000 itself, a milestone year symbolizing the turn of the millennium, a time when the United States Mint was under intense pressure to produce massive quantities of coinage for circulation while also experimenting with new technologies, tighter tolerances, and evolving quality control systems. Yet despite all the automation and modern machinery, the Mint remained a place where human decisions, mechanical wear, and experimental processes could intersect in unpredictable ways, and this intersection is precisely where legendary errors are born, because even in an era of advanced minting, billions of coins were being struck annually, and when production volume reaches such staggering levels, even a 1 in a billion error can exist, and when such an error survives, escapes destruction, and is discovered in pristine condition, it becomes a once-in-a-generation artifact. And the year 2000 cent itself is significant because it was produced exclusively using the copper-plated zinc composition that had been standard since the early 1980s, meaning that any deviation from this expected composition immediately raises red flags and massive interest, and one of the most powerful drivers of extreme value in modern cents is the possibility of a wrong planchet or wrong metal strike, because history has repeatedly shown that leftover planchets, experimental blanks, or foreign planchets can accidentally be fed into the presses, and while the Mint maintains strict controls, it is not infallible. And imagine the discovery of a genuine 2001 cent struck on a solid copper planchet weighing approximately 3.11 grams rather than the standard 2.5 grams, fully authenticated and confirmed through metallurgical analysis. Such a coin would already be considered a major transitional anomaly because it would imply that copper planchets from pre-1982 or experimental stock somehow remained in the system nearly 2 decades later, raising profound questions about Mint inventory practices and internal testing. And such a discovery would immediately draw comparisons to legendary errors like the 1943 copper cent, but the path to $12 million requires even more layers of rarity, because the most valuable coins are often those that combine multiple independent errors into a single unique specimen, and this is where double dies come into play. Because a double die is not a simple striking error but a flaw created during the die manufacturing process itself, meaning every coin struck from that die carries the same doubling. And while minor double dies are relatively common, major double dies with bold separation visible to the naked eye are extremely rare in modern coinage, and imagine a 2000 cent displaying an extreme double die obverse with dramatic doubling on the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." Not machine doubling or strike doubling but true hub doubling with rounded secondary images, and then imagine that same coin also displaying a double die reverse. Affecting the Lincoln Memorial design, something exceptionally rare and historically important, because dual-sided double dies are almost unheard of in modern cents, and now layer this double die onto a wrong metal planchet and the rarity multiplies exponentially. But the story does not stop there, because striking errors add another powerful dimension of uniqueness and visual impact. And coins can be struck off-center when the planchet is not properly seated in the collar, resulting in part of the design missing, and while off-center strikes are known, those that retain the full date and mint mark are far more desirable. And now imagine a 2000 cent struck significantly off-center, showing a dramatic crescent of blank planchet while still clearly displaying the full date, and then imagine that coin receiving a second strike, slightly rotated, creating overlapping images of Lincoln's portrait and inscriptions. And such multiple strike errors create a visual story frozen in metal, instantly captivating collectors because they can see the chaos of the minting process in a single object. And when such a visually dramatic error occurs on a wrong metal planchet with a double die, the result is not just rare but potentially unique, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful drivers of value in the high-end numismatic market, because collectors with significant resources are not simply buying rarity. They are buying exclusivity, the chance to own something that no one else in the world can possess, and die failures add yet another layer of potential value, because as dies are used repeatedly they can crack, chip, or shatter, creating features like cuds and retained cuds where portions of the die break away and leave raised areas on the coin, and while small die cracks are common, massive retained cuds that alter major design elements are rare and dramatic. And if a 2000 cent were struck during a catastrophic die failure, producing a large raised area that partially obscures Lincoln's portrait or lettering, yet remains clearly identifiable and aesthetically striking, it would add another chapter to the coin's story, and the more chapters a coin has, the more compelling it becomes to collectors and institutions. But even with all these physical anomalies, condition remains absolutely critical, because a $12 million coin cannot be heavily worn, damaged, or cleaned, and the ideal specimen would be uncirculated, with original surfaces, strong strike details, and minimal contact marks, perhaps saved unknowingly in a roll, bag, or mint-sealed container before it ever saw circulation. An original mint luster or red coloration would further elevate its desirability, because eye appeal plays a massive role in high-end valuations, and beyond the coin itself, provenance can dramatically influence value. Because if such a coin could be traced back to a credible source such as a former mint employee estate, a sealed government release, or a well-documented hoard, the narrative becomes stronger and more believable, and collectors are not just buying a piece of metal, they are buying history, documentation, and confidence, and certification would be the final gatekeeper, because a coin of this magnitude would require authentication by top grading services using advanced techniques such as weight measurement, X-ray fluorescence testing, die state analysis, and peer review by multiple experts, and once certified, the coin would instantly become a centerpiece of modern numismatics, drawing international attention, media coverage, and intense debate, and comparisons would inevitably be made to legendary rarities like the 1943 copper cent, the 1955 double die, and other record-setting coins, and when such comparisons enter the conversation, prices can escalate rapidly due to competitive bidding, institutional interest, and the desire among elite collectors to own a piece that defines an era. And it is also important to understand the psychology of the collectibles market, because record-breaking prices are not always driven by logic alone but by emotion, prestige, and the fear of missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And when a coin is believed to be unique or nearly unique, price guides become irrelevant, replaced by private negotiations and auction room battles, and this is how eight-figure prices become possible. And while it must be stated honestly that no confirmed 2001 cent has officially sold for $12 million to date, the exploration of this possibility illustrates how value is constructed in numismatics and why even modern coins deserve careful examination, because history has repeatedly shown that extraordinary errors are often discovered years or decades after minting, sometimes by ordinary people who simply took the time to look closely, weigh their coins, or notice something unusual. And the year 2000 cent represents a fascinating symbol of modern coinage at the turn of a new millennium, a time of both technological confidence and human imperfection, and within that imperfection lies the potential for incredible discoveries, and the idea that a penny could be worth $12 million is not just a fantasy but a reflection of how rarity, error, condition, story, and demand intersect at the highest levels of collecting, inspiring curiosity, excitement, and the enduring dream that somewhere out there, perhaps sitting quietly in a jar, drawer, or forgotten collection, is a small copper-colored coin with a story so extraordinary that it could change everything, and that is why these stories matter, why collectors keep searching, and why the humble 1-cent coin continues to capture the imagination of people around the world. Next, 2023 1-cent coin. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating and talked about coin stories of modern times, the incredible idea that a simple 2023 1-cent coin, something most people overlook, toss into jars, or leave forgotten in pockets, could under the right circumstances be worth an astonishing $11 million, and as you settle in, imagine holding a tiny copper-colored coin that looks ordinary at first glance yet carries within it a combination of rare errors, accidental mistakes, unexpected possibilities, and historical circumstances that transform it from loose change into a legendary collector's dream, because in the world of coin collecting, value is not just about age or metal content but about stories frozen in metal, moments where machines, humans, and timing align imperfectly to create something extraordinary. And the 2023 1-cent coin represents the perfect modern example of how a coin struck in our own time can rival or even surpass the values of coins centuries old when the right factors come together, and the fascination begins with understanding that modern mints produce billions of coins every year using highly automated processes designed to eliminate errors, yet paradoxically it is precisely when these near-perfect systems fail in rare and unusual ways that collectors become obsessed. Because a mistake that slips through quality control becomes a physical record of an event that was never meant to happen, and in 2023 the United States Mint continued producing Lincoln cents using copper-plated zinc planchets with incredible speed and efficiency, but within that vast ocean of production, collectors believe that a tiny handful of coins may exist that display dramatic and compounding errors so extreme that they rewrite expectations of what a modern penny can be worth. And when people hear the phrase 1 cent costing $11 million, it sounds impossible or exaggerated, yet history shows that error coins with the right combination of rarity, condition, and story can command prices that defy logic, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying uniqueness, mystery, and the thrill of owning something almost no one else can ever have. And the errors that could push a 2023 1 cent into this mythical value range begin with planchet mistakes, which occur before the coin is ever struck. Such as a cent being struck on the wrong metal entirely. Imagine a 2023 penny accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin, resulting in an incorrect weight, color, and composition that immediately signals something extraordinary. And while wrong planchet errors do occur, their value increases exponentially when they involve dramatic contrasts, such as a penny struck on a silver-colored planchet or a thicker blank that alters the entire appearance of the coin. And when such an error is paired with perfect preservation and official authentication, collectors are willing to pay astonishing sums because the odds of such a mistake happening and escaping detection in the modern era are astronomically low. And then there are off-metal errors where a penny is struck on a planchet made of experimental alloy or leftover material from a different production run, something that should never leave the mint yet occasionally does, creating a one-of-a-kind artifact that represents a momentary breakdown in procedure. And another powerful category of errors involve striking mistakes, where the planchet is fed incorrectly into the press, resulting in off-center strikes that cut off parts of the design, double strikes where the coin is struck more than once in misaligned positions, or blockage errors where one coin impresses its design onto another, creating a mirror image that looks surreal and instantly captivates collectors. And while single errors can be valuable, it is the stacking of multiple errors on one coin that drives value into extraordinary territory, because each additional error reduces the population of similar coins dramatically. And a 2023 penny that shows a wrong planchet combined with a dramatic off-center strike and a partial blockage would not just be rare, it would be practically unique. And uniqueness is the ultimate currency in collecting, because once a coin becomes one of one, there is no comparable sale to limit its value, and bidding becomes a battle of desire rather than logic. And beyond striking errors, there are die errors, which originate from the engraved dies used to strike coins, such as double dies where the design appears double due to misalignment during the die creation process, resulting in clear doubling visible to the naked eye on letters, numbers, or Lincoln's portrait. And while minor doubling is common and often dismissed, dramatic double dies are legendary. And if a 2023 penny were discovered with bold, unmistakable doubling combined with other errors, it would instantly become one of the most important modern error coins ever found, because double dies are not caused by wear or damage after the coin is struck, they are baked into the die itself, meaning every coin struck from that die would share the error. Yet if the die were corrected or removed quickly, only a tiny number might exist, and collectors would scramble to locate every example, pushing prices upward with each confirmed discovery. And then there are transitional errors, which occur when the mint changes materials, designs, or processes. And although the Lincoln cent has remained largely consistent, even small changes in plating thickness, die preparation, or composition can create transitional anomalies that are incredibly rare. and if a 2023 penny were struck using an experimental or unintended composition, especially one never officially released, it would represent a forbidden coin, something that technically should not exist in the public sphere, and forbidden coins carry an almost mythic status among collectors because they are tangible evidence of internal experimentation or mistakes that escaped into circulation, and the possibility of a 2023 penny being struck on a pre-1982 style copper planchet, while extremely unlikely, is the kind of scenario that fuels collector dreams and late-night coin roll searching, because if such a coin were verified, it would shatter assumptions about modern mint controls and instantly become a headline-making discovery, and beyond technical errors there is the role of condition, because rarity alone is not enough to reach 8-figure values. A coin must also be preserved in exceptional condition, ideally showing no signs of circulation, with original surfaces, sharp details, and eye appeal that elevates it beyond mere curiosity into true artistry. And in modern coins this often means coins discovered directly from mint rolls or sealed bags, never handled or spent, where the error is preserved exactly as it left. The mint and collectors place enormous premiums on such pristine examples because they represent the purest form of the error, untouched by the wear of everyday use, and another layer of value comes from documentation and authentication, because in a market flooded with altered coins and false claims, the role of professional grading services becomes critical, and a 2023 penny claiming to be worth millions would need to be authenticated by top-tier experts, encapsulated, graded, and accompanied by detailed analysis explaining the nature of the errors and why they are genuine, and once such a coin is certified, it becomes a permanent part of the numismatic record, referenced in articles, auction catalogs, and collector forums, and this recognition further amplifies its value because it transitions from a private curiosity into a publicly acknowledged treasure. And storytelling plays a powerful role as well, because collectors are human, and humans are drawn to stories, and a 2023 penny discovered by an ordinary person in everyday change carries a narrative that resonates deeply, reinforcing the dream that anyone could stumble upon a fortune without realizing it, and auction houses understand this psychology, crafting descriptions that highlight the improbability and drama of the discovery, which in turn fuels competitive bidding. And when two or more wealthy collectors become emotionally invested in owning the most famous modern penny ever found, price ceilings evaporate, and the number $11 million, while shocking, becomes conceivable when placed in the context of art sales, rare stamps, and historic coins that have achieved similar or higher prices due to their uniqueness and cultural impact. And it is important to understand that such a value does not represent the average 2023 penny or even a typical error, but an extreme outlier, the kind of coin that might exist in a quantity of 1 or 2 examples at most, and this rarity is compounded by the sheer scale of modern production, because when billions of coins are struck, even a 1 in a billion error theoretically can exist, and if that error is dramatic enough, it becomes a lightning strike event in the numismatic world, and the fascination extends to the possibilities that such a coin could still be out there, unnoticed in a jar, a drawer, or a bankroll, because modern error coins often enter circulation before being discovered, and many people do not examine their change closely, especially with coins as low value as pennies, which increases the odds that something extraordinary could slip through unnoticed for years, and this possibility keeps collectors searching, examining every 2023 penny they encounter with renewed attention. Next, 2010 D1 cent. Today we are exploring one of the most fascinating and almost unbelievable ideas in modern numismatics, the idea that a 2010 D1 cent coin, a penny that many people have spent without a second thought, could under extremely rare and extraordinary circumstances be valued as high as $14 million, and while that number sounds shocking, sensational, or even impossible at first, the purpose of this deep dive is to explain how errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and rare possibilities can combine in such a powerful way that a modern coin becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery. And as always, this discussion is not about normal pocket change but about the most extreme and unique examples that could exist. So let us begin by setting the stage, because the year 2010 represents a very interesting moment in United States coin production, a time when the mint was operating at incredibly high speeds using advanced technology, yet still producing billions of coins annually, which paradoxically increases the likelihood that rare and dramatic errors can occur and slip through unnoticed, especially when human oversight, machine calibration issues, and experimental processes intersect, and the Denver Mint, represented by the D Mint mark, is one of the largest production facilities in the country, meaning that even a tiny fraction of error coins can translate into potentially unique survivors, and when we talk about a hypothetical $14 million 2010 D cent, we are not talking about a common die chip or a slightly off-center strike. We are talking about a coin that represents a perfect storm of rarity, historical significance, physical evidence, and collector demand, beginning with the most well-known and widely collected category of error coins, the doubled die, because doubled dies occur during the creation of the working dies themselves, not during the striking of the coin, which means every coin struck from that die will show the same doubling, and when the doubling is strong, clear, and dramatic, it instantly becomes a centerpiece of modern numismatics, and although doubled dies are more commonly associated with earlier decades, the possibility of a major doubled die obverse or reverse in 2010 cannot be completely dismissed, especially considering the complexity of modern die preparation and the enormous volume of dies produced. And now imagine a 2010 D cent with an extreme doubled die obverse showing bold separation. On the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust," not a minor shift but a true hub doubling visible to the naked eye, and then imagine that same coin also exhibiting a doubled die reverse affecting the Lincoln Memorial design, creating a dual-sided doubled die that would already place the coin among the rarest modern cents ever known, but for a valuation approaching $14 million. The story would need to go much further, because metal composition errors are where modern pennies begin to rival the great legends of the past, and although all 2010 cents were officially struck on copper-plated zinc planchets, history has shown us repeatedly that the mint has experienced transitional errors, leftover planchets, wrong metal strikes, and experimental alloys escaping into circulation. And if a 2010 D cent were discovered struck on a solid copper planchet weighing approximately 3.11 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams, that alone would be a monumental discovery, because it would indicate the survival of a copper planchet decades after the official transition, raising profound questions about mint storage, inventory control, and experimental practices, and such a coin, if fully authenticated, would already command multi-million-dollar interest, but to reach the realm of $14 million, the metal itself could be even more extraordinary, such as an aluminum planchet, a brass alloy, or a prototype composition developed for testing purposes that was never intended for public release, and if metallurgical analysis could match the alloy precisely to documented mint experiments from that era, the historical importance would be enormous, transforming the coin into a physical artifact of policy exploration and technological experimentation. And now add another layer of rarity through striking errors, because coins can be misstruck in countless ways, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, multiple strikes, or rotated dies, and while each of these errors can be valuable on its own, their value multiplies exponentially when they appear together, and imagine a 2010 D cent struck off-center enough to show a dramatic crescent of missing design while still retaining the full date and mint mark, then imagine that same coin being struck a second time, slightly rotated, creating overlapping impressions of Lincoln's portrait and inscriptions, and then imagine that both strikes occurred on an experimental planchet, instantly creating a visual spectacle that would captivate collectors and museums alike, because IAPL plays a massive role in high-end numismatics, and coins that tell their story visually often achieve far higher prices than technically rare but visually dull pieces. And then consider die failures, which occur when a die begins to crack, chip, or shatter under the immense pressure of repeated strikes, leading to features like cuds, retained cuds, or massive die breaks. And while minor die cracks are common, catastrophic die failures are rare and dramatic, and if a 2010 D cent were struck during such a failure, producing large raised areas where portions of the die broke away, especially if those breaks interacted with key design elements like Lincoln's portrait or the inscriptions, the coin would gain another layer of uniqueness. And now imagine stacking all of these features into a single coin, a double die obverse and reverse, struck on an experimental planchet, exhibiting a dramatic off-center multiple strike, and showing evidence of a major die break, all while remaining in uncirculated condition with original surfaces and strong visual appeal, because condition cannot be overstated, as even the rarest error can lose tremendous value if it is damaged, cleaned, or heavily worn, and a $14 million coin would need to be preserved in exceptional shape, ideally discovered early and protected from circulation, perhaps saved unknowingly in a roll, a bag, or a mint-sealed box. And provenance would further elevate its value, because if such a coin could be traced back to a credible source, such as a former mint employee's estate, a sealed government release, or a documented hoard, the story would gain authenticity and intrigue, and collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories, history, and legitimacy. And speaking of legitimacy, certification would be absolutely critical, because a coin of this magnitude would require extensive testing by top grading services, including weight verification, metal analysis using advanced techniques, die state comparison, and peer review by leading numismatic experts, and once certified, the coin would instantly become a headline-grabbing sensation, compared to legendary rarities like the 1943 copper cent or the 1955 double die, and debated endlessly in numismatic circles, with experts analyzing how such an error could have occurred in the modern mint environment, and beyond the technical and historical aspects. There is also the psychology of the market to consider, because when a coin is truly unique, when no other example is known or likely to exist, wealthy collectors and institutions often compete not based on rational price guides but on desire, prestige, and the opportunity to own something that no one else can, and that competitive dynamic is what drives prices into 8 figures. And while it must be stated honestly that no confirmed 2010 D cent has sold for $14 million. As of now, the exploration of this possibility serves to illustrate how value is created in numismatics, how rarity, error, story, and condition intersect, and why it is always worth examining even modern coins carefully, because history has shown time and again that today's pocket change can become tomorrow's legendary treasure, and the 2010 D1 cent, produced in an era of advanced technology yet still subject to human and mechanical imperfection, stands as a reminder that even in the modern age, the mint is not immune to mistakes, and those mistakes, when rare enough, become priceless, inspiring collectors, treasure hunters, and everyday people to look more closely at the small details, because sometimes, the smallest coin can carry the biggest surprise, and that is what makes stories like this so captivating, fueling curiosity, debate, and the enduring dream that somewhere out there, perhaps sitting unnoticed in a jar or drawer, is a penny that could change everything. Next. 2006 D1 cent. Today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and almost unbelievable ideas in modern coin collecting, the story of how a simple 2006 D1 cent coin, something most people would never look at twice, could under the rarest circumstances be worth an astonishing $10 million. And as you settle in and imagine the humble penny that passes through millions of hands every single day, consider how this tiny piece of metal can become a symbol of chance, imperfection, and hidden value, because the world of numismatics teaches us that perfection is common but mistakes are rare, and rarity is where true value lives, and the 2006 Lincoln cent sits at a fascinating crossroads of modern minting technology and the unpredictable human and mechanical errors that still manage to slip through even the most advanced systems, making it a perfect candidate for legendary error stories that capture the imagination of collectors worldwide. And to understand how such a coin could possibly be worth $10 million, we must first understand that value in coin collecting is not determined by face value, age alone, or even metal content, but by a complex mixture of rarity, condition, demand, and most importantly uniqueness. And in 2006 the Denver Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents using copper-plated zinc planchets, relying on highly automated presses designed to eliminate mistakes, yet history has proven again and again that even the most precise systems are vulnerable to rare moments of failure, and when those failures occur in just the right way, the result can be a coin that should not exist, and coins that should not exist become the holy grail for collectors, and one of the most powerful categories of errors that could elevate a 2006 penny into the multi-million-dollar range begins even before the coin is struck, at the planchet stage, because planchets are manufactured separately and then fed into presses at incredible speeds. And if the wrong type of blank enters the system, the press will strike it without question, creating a wrong planchet error that instantly stands out. And imagine a 2006 D1 cent struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, perhaps thicker, heavier, or composed of a different metal altogether, resulting in a coin with an unusual color, weight, and sound. Something that immediately feels wrong in the hand, and while wrong planchet errors are known, their value increases exponentially when they involve dramatic contrasts or metals never intended for cents, because such errors demonstrate a complete breakdown in minting protocol, and in the modern era such breakdowns are incredibly rare, which is why collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums when one surfaces, and even more compelling are off-metal errors, where a penny is struck on an experimental or leftover alloy, perhaps from a test run or a foreign contract, and these coins become forbidden artifacts, physical evidence of something that was never meant to leave the mint, and forbidden coins carry immense allure because they represent secrets accidentally revealed to the public. And beyond planchet errors, there are striking errors that occur during the actual minting process, when the planchet is struck between dies under immense pressure, and if anything goes wrong at this stage, the result can be visually dramatic and instantly captivating, such as off-center strikes where part of the design is missing and blank metal remains visible, or double strikes where the coin is struck more than once with misalignment, creating overlapping images that seem almost surreal. And while minor off-center strikes are relatively common, extreme examples where a large portion of the design is missing yet key identifying features like the date and mint mark remain visible are far rarer and far more valuable. And value skyrockets when such errors are combined, because a 2006 D penny that is both struck on the wrong planchet and dramatically off-center becomes exponentially rarer than either error alone. And then there are blockage errors, which occur when one coin becomes stuck to a die and impresses its image onto another coin, creating a mirror image that looks like a ghostly reflection of the original design. And blockages are visually stunning and instantly recognizable, making them highly desirable. And when a blockage occurs on a wrong planchet or alongside other errors, it creates a one-of-a-kind object that defies standard classification, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because once a coin becomes truly unique, there is no market comparison to limit its price, and bidding becomes a contest of desire rather than logic. And another crucial category of errors that could transform a 2006 D penny into a $10 million legend involves die errors, which originate from the engraved dies themselves, and one of the most famous die errors is the double die, where elements of the design appear double due to misalignment during the die creation process, resulting in bold, clear doubling that cannot be mistaken for damage or wear. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed, major double dies are legendary, and if a dramatic double die were discovered on a 2006 D penny, especially one with strong doubling on the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait, it would instantly become one of the most important modern error coins ever found, because double dies are baked into the die itself, meaning every coin struck from that die shares the error. Yet if the die were corrected or removed quickly, only a handful of coins might exist, creating a tiny population that collectors would fiercely compete to own. And the situation becomes even more extraordinary if such a double die is paired with other errors, because the odds of multiple independent mistakes aligning on a single coin are astronomically low, and such coins begin to feel less like accidents and more like miracles. And then there are transitional errors, which occur when the mint is in the process of changing materials, designs, or procedures. And while the Lincoln cent composition had stabilized long before 2006, even small changes in plating thickness, die preparation, or internal testing could create transitional anomalies that were never meant for circulation. And if a 2006 D penny were struck using an unintended composition, perhaps thicker copper plating or an experimental alloy, it would represent a snapshot of internal processes rarely seen by the public, and collectors prize these snapshots because they offer insight into the hidden workings of the mint. And another factor that cannot be overstated is condition, because even the rarest error will not achieve its maximum value unless it is preserved in exceptional state, ideally showing no signs of circulation, with sharp details, original surfaces, and strong eye appeal. And in modern coins this often means examples discovered directly from mint rolls or sealed bags, where the error is preserved exactly as it left the press, untouched by wear or environmental damage. And collectors are willing to pay enormous premiums for such pristine examples because they represent the purest expression of the error. and authentication plays a critical role in unlocking extreme value. Because the market for error coins is filled with altered pieces, damaged coins, and exaggerated claims, and a 2006 D penny claiming to be worth $10 million would need to be authenticated and certified by top-tier grading services, accompanied by detailed analysis explaining the nature of the errors and why they are genuine, and once such a coin is certified, it becomes part of the permanent numismatic record, referenced in auction catalogs, scholarly articles, and collector discussions, and this recognition further amplifies its value by transforming it from a private curiosity into a publicly acknowledged treasure, and the story behind the discovery adds yet another layer of value, because collectors are drawn to narratives that resonate emotionally, and the idea that an ordinary person could find a fortune in everyday change captures the imagination like few other stories can, reinforcing the dream that anyone, anywhere, could stumble upon something life-changing without realizing it at first, and auction houses understand this psychology, crafting descriptions that emphasize the improbability and drama of such discoveries, which in turn fuels competitive bidding and drives prices higher, and when wealthy collectors compete for ownership of what could be the most famous modern penny ever discovered, price limits become meaningless, and $10 million becomes conceivable when placed in the context of other collectibles such as rare art, historic manuscripts, or legendary stamps that have achieved similar or greater prices due to their uniqueness and cultural impact. And it is important to remember that such a value does not represent the average 2060 penny or even a typical error coin, but an extreme outlier, a statistical anomaly that might exist in a quantity of 1 or 2 examples at most, and this rarity is magnified by the sheer scale of modern production, because when billions of coins are struck, even a 1 in a billion error can theoretically exist, and if that error is dramatic enough, it becomes a lightning strike event in the numismatic world, and the possibility that such a coin could still be out there, unnoticed in a jar, drawer, or bank roll, adds an element of mystery and excitement that keeps collectors searching, because pennies are often ignored. Last. 2005 1-cent coin. Today we are diving deep into a fascinating and almost unbelievable idea that continues to capture the imagination of collectors around the world, the story of how a simple 2005 1-cent coin, a penny that most people would casually ignore or toss aside, could under the rarest and most dramatic circumstances be worth an astonishing $9 million. And as you settle in and imagine the countless pennies that pass through hands every single day, consider how one tiny coin from 2005 could become a legendary artifact of modern numismatics, not because it was meant to be special, but because something went wrong, something unexpected happened in the complex and highly controlled minting process, and those mistakes, errors, and unlikely combinations of circumstances transformed an ordinary cent into an object of intense desire and incredible value. Because in the world of coin collecting, perfection is common but imperfection is rare, and rarity is where true value is born, and the 2005 Lincoln cent exists in a time when minting technology was already highly advanced, production numbers were massive, and quality control systems were designed to catch even the smallest flaw, which makes any significant error that escaped into circulation even more remarkable. And to understand how such a coin could reach a $9 million valuation, it is essential to understand how collectors think, because value is not determined by face value, metal content, or even age alone, but by a powerful combination of rarity, condition, demand, historical context, and above all uniqueness. And in 2005 billions of pennies were struck using copper-plated zinc planchets, moving through automated systems at astonishing speed, and yet even in such an environment, rare mistakes can and do occur, and when they occur in just the right way, they create coins that should not exist. And coins that should not exist are the ultimate prizes for collectors, because they represent moments where the system failed in a way that produced something entirely new, and one of the most important categories of errors that could elevate a 2005 penny into the multi-million-dollar realm begins at the very start of the process with planchet errors, because before any coin is struck, blank metal discs are prepared to precise specifications, and if the wrong blank enters the system, the press will strike it regardless, creating a wrong planchet error that instantly stands out. And imagine a 2005 1-cent struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, thicker, heavier, or composed of a different metal entirely, producing a coin that feels wrong in the hand, sounds different when dropped, and looks completely unlike a normal penny, and while wrong planchet errors are known to exist, their value increases dramatically when the contrast is extreme. Because extreme contrasts indicate a profound breakdown in minting protocol, something that is exceptionally rare in the modern era, and collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums for such evidence of minting chaos. And even more intriguing are off-metal errors, where a penny is struck on a planchet made of an experimental alloy, leftover material, or a blank intended for a foreign contract, and these coins become forbidden objects, physical proof of something that was never meant to enter circulation. And forbidden coins carry a special allure because they feel like secrets accidentally released to the public. And beyond planchet issues, there are striking errors that occur during the actual moment the coin is struck, when immense pressure brings the design into the metal, and if anything goes wrong at this stage, the result can be dramatic and visually stunning, such as off-center strikes where a portion of the design is missing and blank metal is visible, or double strikes where the coin is struck more than once in misaligned positions, creating overlapping images that seem almost unreal. And while small off-center strikes are relatively common and modestly valuable, extreme examples where a large portion of the design is missing yet essential details like the date remain visible are far rarer and far more valuable, and value increases exponentially when multiple errors appear on the same coin, because the likelihood of two or more independent mistakes aligning on a single piece is extraordinarily low. And a 2005 penny that is both struck on the wrong planchet and dramatically off-center would be exponentially rarer than either error alone. And then there are blockage errors, which occur when one coin becomes stuck to a die and impresses its design onto another coin, creating a mirror image that looks like a ghostly reflection of the original design. And blockages are highly prized because they are instantly recognizable and visually fascinating. And when a blockage occurs on a wrong planchet or alongside other errors, the result is a one-of-a-kind object that defies standard classification, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because once a coin becomes truly unique, there is no comparison sale to limit its price, and bidding becomes a battle of desire rather than logic. And another powerful category of errors that could transform a 2005 penny into a $9 million legend involves die errors, which originate from the engraved dies used to strike coins. And among the most famous die errors are double dies, where elements of the design appear double due to misalignment during the die creation process, resulting in clear, bold doubling that cannot be mistaken for damage or wear. And while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed, major double dies are legendary, and if a dramatic double die were discovered on a 2005 penny, especially with strong doubling on the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait, it would instantly become one of the most important modern era coins ever found, because double dies are not post-mint damage, they are baked into the die itself, meaning every coin struck from that die shares the error. Yet if the die were corrected or removed quickly, only a handful of examples might exist, creating an extremely small population that collectors would fiercely compete to own. And the situation becomes even more extraordinary if such a double die is combined with other errors, because the odds of multiple major mistakes occurring together are astronomically small, and such coins begin to feel almost mythical. And then there are transitional errors, which occur when the mint is in the process of changing materials, designs, or procedures. And although the Lincoln cent composition had stabilized long before 2005, even minor changes in plating thickness, die preparation, or internal testing can create transitional anomalies that were never intended for public circulation. And if a 2005 penny were struck using an unintended composition, such as unusually thick copper plating or an experimental alloy, it would represent a snapshot of internal mint processes rarely seen by collectors. And these snapshots are prized because they provide insight into the hidden workings of coin production. And condition plays a critical role in determining value, because even the rarest error will not achieve its full potential unless it is preserved in exceptional state, ideally showing no signs of circulation, with sharp details, original surfaces, and strong eye appeal. And in the case of modern coins, this often means examples discovered directly from mint rolls or sealed bags, where the error is preserved exactly as it left the press, untouched by wear, corrosion, or handling. And collectors place enormous premiums on such pristine examples because they represent the purest expression of the error. And authentication is essential in unlocking extreme value, because the market for error coins is filled with altered pieces, damaged coins, and exaggerated claims. And a 2005 penny claiming to be worth $9 million would need to be authenticated and certified by top-tier grading services, accompanied by detailed analysis explaining the nature of the errors and why they are genuine, and once such a coin is certified, it becomes part of the permanent numismatic record, referenced in auction catalogs, scholarly discussions, and collector databases. And this recognition amplifies its value by transforming it from a private curiosity into a publicly acknowledged treasure, and the story of discovery adds another powerful layer, because collectors are deeply drawn to narratives that resonate emotionally, and the idea that an ordinary person could find a fortune in everyday change is one of the most compelling stories in collecting, reinforcing the dream that anyone could stumble upon something life-changing without realizing it at first. And auction houses understand this psychology and craft descriptions that emphasize the improbability and drama of such finds, fueling competitive bidding and driving prices higher. And when wealthy collectors compete for ownership of what could be the most famous modern penny ever discovered, price ceilings dissolve, and $9 million becomes conceivable when viewed alongside other collectibles such as rare artworks, historic manuscripts, and legendary stamps that have achieved similar or even greater prices due to their uniqueness and cultural significance. And it is crucial to remember that such a value does not represent the average 2005 penny or even a typical error coin, but an extreme outlier, a statistical anomaly that might exist in a population of 1 or 2 examples at most, and this rarity is magnified by the sheer scale of modern coin production.